One of the nice things here when you're working outdoors is you can separate your subject from the background by a huge distance, so that in itself creates an almost mandatory out-of-focus background. When you're in a studio, unless you've got a huge studio, if you're using a backdrop of some kind, you may only have your subject 4 or 5 feet in front of that backdrop, and it gets difficult to separation of focus. I mean, be really aware of that today if you're shooting on, and everything's going to be uneven here. Get a tripod, try to adjust that thing so you're not, you could accidentally, when you're adjusting the thing, end up with it in a really precarious situation, and all of a sudden just a little tip and it's over. So adjust. What I always do is when I get my camera position set, then I'll just adjust the center column, use it as like a plumb, and get it so that it's perfectly level, so that you know it's going to take a pretty serious knock to knock that tripod over. What I like to do, and what seems to be a good formula, is find a backdrop that you like and a direction of light, so that you've already got a decent area behind the subject, and you've got, in this case, if the main light is coming, and you can actually see this when I look around. If I look toward, is it Trisha or Trish? Trisha. She is pretty soft lighting, but her face is a little bit darker than if I look over to this direction to see yours. So for sure, there's a direction of light coming this way, and then as I look out at the folks looking right at me from there, I can see at least the stop difference in the highlight side of your face and the shadow side. So we have a real soft direction to the light. The lighting on her face right now is pretty flat because she's got her back to the light. So this is a great way to start without having to create a bunch of problems for yourself. Because if I started shooting, say, toward Ken, right down there, and then all of a sudden if the sun popped out, then the side of his face is going to be brightly lit, and now the shadow side is going to be dim, and I got to deal with the contrast issue. If I'm shooting this way toward Trisha, and the sun comes out behind her, all that happens is we get a nice rim light on her hair and shoulders. It doesn't affect, I'm not going to have these big hot spots of light on her face. So it's just a smart, safe way to start off. I may shoot this horizontally just because she's dressed a little edgy, so we don't need to, I'm not going to do a full length right here. I'm probably going to do a mid-torso up and maybe shoot fairly loose horizontal and then just put her off to one side in the frame. I really want to do more of a lighting demonstration here to start with, just to show you what you can do easily with these lights. Flash is set here. Okay, it's turned on. So let's see what the meter says, how much flash is coming out of this unit at a quarter power. F13. That was at what, 400 ISO? So we're putting out a significant amount more light than what we need. I'm going to try to balance, in this case, I'm going to try to balance my flash fill with what the ambient is. And then the great thing about this, if I decide I want to darken the background a little bit more, I just increase the amount of flash, and then that forces me to have to stop my aperture down a little bit, make the aperture a little bit smaller, which in effect is going to darken the background, because the flash is not affecting the background. The background is a complete separate stage from the foreground. So we can, through shutter speeds, lighten or darken the background, and through the amount of flash and our aperture control, we can change how bright or dark Trisha looks. So this is perfect. If she was standing right up next to a painted backdrop, then we'd be lighting both the subject and the background with the same light, and as I crank the power up on one, then they both get brighter or darker. So you really couldn't separate them. This way we got perfect control. It's much easier. Let me take this down to, I'll take it down to 8. Let's fire it again. I can fire it from right here and see what. 125. I can look right back in your face. I have 10. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to feather the light, which is another technique that you might want to mess around with if you haven't done that before. This is aimed right at him. And we're getting more light energy from the center of this beam than we are from the edges. So feathering the light simply means aiming it. This is feathering it toward the camera, away from the camera. If I feather it toward the camera, it's going to put her face in a situation where she's getting just a little bit less light. So if we meter that now, let's see what happens. And I feathered it toward the camera a little bit. F9. So we went down a third of a stop. Just by twisting this light just a little bit. Now I can take it down to F8 by going just a little bit more to the left. I'm going to about F. What I'm going to guess is about F8. Somewhere in there, over F9. F9. And let me do a shot first without the flash, and then we'll do one with the flash. And since we took that first meter reading, it looks to me, and you would expect this, it's gotten a little bit brighter. So, focus on her face. We're at F8 at a 1/25 without the flash. And all I have to do to not fire the flash is just pull the transmitter out. We lock the camera into position here. Yeah, the background looks good and her face looks a little dark, just kind of like I'd expected. So now we'll do one with the flash. Good, just keep looking right here. These are mainly just lighting tests to start with. This time, Chris, you just turn your face toward that light a little bit more. Good, right there, nice. Look right here. Good. Perfect. Now this one, it was a little bit hot. I just moved it back because I'm not so concerned about the quality of this. I just want this light to be separated here. And what's happening is this flash unit here, when the beam shoots out, it's filling up the entire umbrella. So we're getting a nice big light source here. The only downside is we're shooting right back into my lens. So this becomes pretty risky. You have the threat of lens flare. So we'll see what happens. I've got a lens shade on there, but I mean I can look from this light source and I can see that my lens is exposed to these rays as it is to the overhead light. Half a stop. This is where you have to test it to see if your first light is powerful enough to trigger your secondary light. I'm going to do it on 3. We know that one's working. So the only question is that light going to fire there? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it did. The only thing is I can see I placed it directly in my shot. Not unusual. I could fake you out and pretend like I didn't make a mistake and just zoom in tighter, but I really want that background. Yeah, that's nice right there. Perfect. Let me do one again without either light. Again, the background is looking great, just initially. And it did. So now we have a wonderful little rim light. Her hair, this is the highlight side toward the softbox, where the umbrella is the shadow side. I just saw briefly on the back of the screen, we had a killer little kick light coming in on her hair. And when her hair, the color it is, when it's backlit, it just looks awesome. Perfect. Don't move a thing. Let me try one even a little bit tighter. So just keep it a little more to your left. Chin down a little bit. Slowly turn your face back this way a little more. Good, good, good. A little bit more to your left. Nice. Take your chin down. Just good. And just tip the top of your head to your left. Great. So that's it. I'm going to switch here. And again, like I mentioned last night, we're at 125th of a second. I can hand hold this and still be pretty confident. I'm going to switch the handheld just because I want to go vertically. Just like that. Don't move a thing. And lean a little bit from your waist, just a little bit more forward toward me. Grab that light up. That's good. Perfect. Don't move a thing. Turn your face just to your left a little more. That's nice. Good. And your chin down just a little bit. Let's check that last one out. I think you got good. Nice. Perfect. Right here again. Smile. Sorry. And one more. Just pull your hair back on your face. Go ahead and very slowly pull your hair back. I'm going to give a shot.